So much for the battle of aces. Both Chris Sale and Clayton Kershaw were off last night and didn't record an out after the fourth inning, leaving the game to be decided by the Red Sox' superior execution and timely hitting, and the Dodgers' mistakes, to give them Game 1. For Game 2 we get two lefties once again. They're not quite as well regarded as the two who took the mound last night, but they stand a decent chance of lasting longer. At least we can hope. World Series Game 2 Dodgers vs Red Sox Ballpark, Fenway Park time, 8:09 p.m. Eastern TV, Fox pitchers, Hyun-Jin Ryu vs. David Price breakdown. As everyone on the planet has noted, David Price experienced no end of playoff frustration before tossing 6 shutout innings against the Astros in Game 5 of the ALCS. That's the David Price Boston would love to see tonight, and we'll know pretty early if he's there again. Watch his use of the changeup. He went with it more than twice as often as he usually does against the Astros, and look to see if the Dodgers chase it. If they do, LA is in for a long night. If the Dodgers lay off, don't panic and make Price work, they'll have a much better night. For the Dodgers it's Ryu, who did not distinguish himself at all in Game 6 of the NLCS against the Brewers. Indeed, he was shelled. It looked like Milwaukee knew what was coming, and either because of pitch tipping or sign stealing, perhaps they did, but Ryu certainly has more pressure on him than Price here. Not that he sounds particularly freaked. Here's what he said yesterday: "When I was in Korea, I only saw Fenway Park through TV. It took me so long to actually get here at the Fenway Park. My initial reaction to the Green Monster is it's very tall. I stood on the field next to the monster after the end of the 2013 World Series. It seems shorter in person if that helps." Hyun-Jin. This one is going to be about more than the starting pitchers, though. As we saw last night, they may not last too long. Even if they do, the outcome is not necessarily going to be in their hands. As noted, the Dodgers need to be disciplined and to lay off Price's change. They also need to execute in ways they simply did not do last night. The Red Sox are enormously talented, do not make many mistakes and put a ton of pressure on the opposition. To beat them, LA has to play as close to flawlessly as possible and catch some breaks. They didn't do the first part last night and thus had no breaks to catch. They'll need to play better tonight. It's that simple. Follow at Craig Calcaterra. There's an old proverb that explains how a very small thing can lead to a big loss. It goes like this: for want of a nail the shoe was lost, for want of a shoe the horse was lost, for want of a horse the knight was lost, for want of a knight the battle was lost, for want of a battle the kingdom was lost. So a kingdom was lost, all for want of a nail. The Dodgers did not lose it all tonight. They still have as many of 6 battles left to save the kingdom, but a series of very small things caused them to lose the battle. That was Game 1 of the 2018 World Series. Sure, you can look at the box score here, see that the Red Sox won 8-4 in a game which was broken wide open with a 3-run homer, and say that Boston's win was a definitive one. And, to be clear, it was a definitive one in every way that mattered. The Red Sox beat Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw 1-4 and now lead the series 1-0. But if you wanted to, you could look at Game 1 in a slightly different way and see how some very, very small things caused this one to get away from the Dodgers. Small things that, but for a couple of inches here or there and a bit more concentration on their part, could have broken differently and could have led to a very different outcome. For example, one could look at the first inning, when the Red Sox took a 2-0 lead, and wonder what might have happened if David Freese had caught the foul ball off of Mookie Betts' bat that somehow eluded him despite it remaining well within play. Instead, it kept Betts alive, allowed him to reach base, allowed him to steal second, and, eventually, allowed him to score on Andrew Benintendi's single to make it a 1-0 game. One can also ask what might have happened if Yasiel Puig had not made an ill-advised throw home on Benintendi's hit, allowing Benintendi to take second. If Puig had simply thought for half a second, realized he had no shot at bats and hit the cutoff man, Benintendi stays at first and does not score on J.D. Martinez's single. A small thing, a matter of execution that all outfielders worked on from the first day of spring training, but a thing which Puig just neglected to do properly. Put those together and one missed foul ball and one brain lock turned what could have been a 0-run first inning into a 2-run first inning for the Red Sox. One could also look at the bottom of the third inning when, with 1 on and 1 out, Steven Pearce hit into what was initially called an inning-ending double play. Replay review got the call right. Pearce beat the throw to first, but there were just a few inches separating the would-be twin killing from the was actually fielder's choice, which kept the inning alive. Along J.D. Martinez double to the triangle in left center gave the Red Sox their third run of the game, and their third run that, had the Dodgers executed more crisply and if an inch or two was gained here or there, would not have scored. One could look at the top of the fifth, when the Dodgers put 2 runners on, chasing Chris Sale from the game and bringing in Matt Barnes. Freeze came up at that point, a righty facing a righty. Throughout the playoffs, Dave Roberts would pinch hit Max Muncy for Freeze in this situation, but, for whatever reason, Roberts let Freeze hit. He promptly struck out. Later, in the 7th, Muncy would pinch hit when a righty was called in and he would smack a solid single to right center. If he had been in and done that, in the 5th, would the Dodgers have scored more than the 1 run they actually scored that inning? Dave Roberts will be asking himself that one for a while, I presume. One could look at the bottom of the 5th, when Ryan Madson came in relief of Clayton, Kershaw. Madson would load the bases, but then strike J.D. Martinez out on 3 pitches before inducing a grounder to short from Xander Bogaerts. 6. 4 nope, just a bit slow once again. Instead of an inning-ending double play which would have left things tied at 3 entering the 6th, Mookie Betts scored and then Andrew Benintendi would score on a Rafael Devers single to make it a 5-3 game. 2 more runners that, but for mere inches, would not have crossed home plate. Takes us to the bottom of the 7th, which featured Eduardo Nunez's big pinch hit 3-run homer. Is it even worth noting at this point that the inning began with Jock Peterson, substituted into the game the previous inning, just barely missing a fly ball down the left field line that went as a double but just as easily could have been caught? Is it worth noting that Nunez's homer came with 2 outs and that, had Peterson made that catch, he wouldn't have even come to bat that inning? Even if you don't assume that, let the record reflect that it could have been a 2-run shot instead of a 3-run shot. The Red Sox won this game by 4 runs, but mere inches gave them 3 or 4 of those runs. A couple of mental mistakes by the Dodgers gave them at least another and, perhaps, cost the Dodgers a run or 2 of their own. None of which is to take a thing away from the Red Sox. One cannot assume that which did not happen would, in fact, happen, and many plays in baseball are decided by mere inches. This exercise was not aimed at discounting the Red Sox victory. They hit Clayton, Kershaw pretty hard, managed clutch hits on numerous occasions and executed on both offense and defense while getting some dominating relief work in a game that could have very easily gotten away from them early thanks to a less than sharp Chris Sale. They won this game and won it convincingly. But the Dodgers had their chances. They had their chances and they blew them, all for want of a nail, as it were. And that had to make them feel pretty dang bad as they left the field tonight. Follow @CraigCalcaterra.